Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the podcast Anxiety My Friend with me, Raquel Coelho. Today, you will hear Simon Scotting, who is currently based in Lisbon, Portugal. He will introduce himself shortly. Hi, Simon.
Hey, Raquel.
Thanks for making the time.
Thanks. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. Do you want to intro a little, introduce yourself to the folks at home?
My name is Simon. I work with different plant medicines, primarily mushrooms, kambo. I also work with other plant medicines too. I work with people in a group setting for group ceremonies and also with individuals to do coaching and to make longer term changes. But it really depends on the individual.
I'm going to start with a really basic question, but I think it's important too, which is, what is a psychedelic?
A psychedelic is a substance that expands the mind, is the basic definition of it. It is a substance that allows you to go inside yourself, to heal things about yourself that maybe you didn't want to touch, but it also allows you to connect and to go outwards. There's different psychedelics and they all play a different role, but the key and the connection with all of them is to study yourself and to allow them to work with your body, to allow you to heal. And after that, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's really the first step, is really to work with the psychedelics to allow them to heal the self. So you could call them a medicine.
Yeah, and I noticed that you said plant medicine, which also brings me to the idea of taboo and, the idea of drugs. Like, it's well studied and researched that the impact that alcohol has in our health is much greater, not even comparable to any psychedelic. And we're talking long-term impact too. Yet, drinking alcohol is totally socially acceptable, it's legal.
It's encouraged.
It's encouraged because you can take off the edge at the end of a stressful day, or if you're a little bit of an introvert and you need to be in a social setting, you can drink, a quick little gin and that'll help you boost your, your social skills. And this is all seen as okay and acceptable, but it has an impact that can be lifelong and create chronic disease too. So what are your thoughts on this? Like, or rather, how might we change the mindset around here? Because I think that's one of the things, is instead of even just thinking, how is this even possible? Because I understand, like, there's a big industry with alcohol and tobacco, for example. So I can see where that comes from. But it's like, moving forward, how might we change this mindset of taboo and limiting our view of what drugs are?
Well, I guess a drug, you could call a drug anything that changes your state of consciousness, which could be much wider defined.
I'll interrupt you because I was even thinking just what you said there. Breath. I was thinking breath. I can alter my state of
with
consciousness.
Oxygen.
Yeah,
Oxygen's a drug, yeah. But even things like, how many times have you read a book and cried? Or watched something and laughed? Art can be a drug. Like, the number of times I've moved into a different state of consciousness just from seeing a piece of art and feeling something inside. And maybe even that art has allowed me to, or that art expresses an emotion I'm feeling in a way that better expresses it than I could express myself. How does it do that? So I think that our definition of a drug needs to be expanded to include a lot more things. But I think specifically with psychedelics, I think it helps to, and you're right, there is a lot of stigma because psychedelics are illegal in a lot of countries. To think of them as medicines, I think it really helps to change the terminology and to be mindful with the terminology that you use. You're not taking a drug, you're taking a medicine. You're not getting high, you're doing work. You're not tripping, you're in a ceremony. And by having a more mindful approach to this, you can really allow them to be a medicine. If you want to use them as a drug, you can use them as a drug, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe this is where people get caught, or not caught, but people miss the point. They miss the point of thinking, that they try to use a psychedelic maybe the same way that they would use alcohol, you know, in a social setting, or to numb themselves. And this is not what they do. This is not what they do. It's the opposite, in fact, of getting drunk, because you have more clarity.
And it's not a quick fix either. That's the thing. Because
it's not a quick fix.
I think sometimes with the legal drugs, like medicine prescribed by a doctor, there's that temptation of, here's a tablet, you're having anxiety, issues. And I don't even mean panic attacks, but there's a ton of books there about anxiety. Wow. But like, here's a quick tablet, that'll help you to cope.
Yeah,
and
you've got a headache. Take this pill.
Yeah.
And then my headache is gone.
And I've got nothing against that. It's great. When I've got a desperate headache, I love the idea of having some medicine that I can take to have immediate relief. But I always get curious about, why do I have that headache? And there's always an answer. The body knows.
Yes.
That's messaging. It's an alarm, right?
Exactly.
Since we can always switch off the alarm. It's a bit like, there's a fire alarm in the building and you just go and switch it off. It's like, no, there's a fire alarm. It's indicating something.
Exactly.
And so maybe through psychedelics and some other plant medicines, you can actually listen to the alarm, and that'll be painful to put your head up close to the alarm, right, when it's ringing. But hearing what it says. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, why am I having this headache? Or as we were talking about before, with depression, a lot of times people will be interested in working with psychedelics if they've been dealing with depression, anxiety, worry, this type of thing. That they're curious about working with psychedelics to see if it can help them, and it definitely can help them, but it's not in the way that they think it will. With antidepressant pills, anti-anxiety pills, the way that they work is just to turn off the alarm bells. The problem is still there. The deeper problem is still there. What is causing the depression? What is causing the anxiety? And it can be very hard for us to see this. There are parts of the mind, the ego, that prevent us from accessing these deeper levels of the body. And sometimes we forget things. We forget things on purpose, and sometimes we don't even realize we've forgotten things, or things bother us from before that we're not even aware of. And the psychedelics allow us to, temporarily turn off the ego, so it doesn't hurt to look at these things. You still need to do the work. And that's the thing, is that we are sold in a society where things are easy. Everyone wants easy fix. Just take this pill, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. It gets rid of the symptoms. It gets rid of the warning bell, but it doesn't actually deal with the deeper problem. The psychedelics put us in a state where we can do the work, where we can understand what the work is that we really need to do. And I always tell people that psychedelics, they won't change anything about you. No matter what you're going through during the experience, you always come back to where you are. But it gives you this temporary window into what's possible if you do the work, and it shows you what you could do. But the important thing is actually to do that work outside of the ceremonies. Otherwise, you just get stuck in this loop of, no, I need more psychedelics.
Patterns.
Yeah, exactly. But the real thing is to do the work that it shows you to do between the experiences, between the psychedelic experiences.
And I love this. There are two things there. One is the linear. I'll just draw here. So if you take a quick pill to relieve symptoms, you'll have an upward trend, as in, okay, I feel relief or I feel better. Whereas with psychedelic, what you're saying is potentially you'll feel worse first, because you're like, oh shit, I can see all this stuff. I was thinking of Dr. Gabor Mate's work of trauma, and you were saying about things in the past that maybe you remember, or even things that you don't remember but your body might remember, as in experiences you may have had that are registered in your body. Like Gabor Mate talks a lot about when he was about 2 months old or so, his mum had to temporarily abandon him. Well, she didn't abandon him, but he got given into the care of someone else, and that he believes that he's got that heavily marked in him. And I think that's a very interesting piece, as in one of my fears too is thinking, what if I don't find this thing, this cause? What is causing this anxiety? So say personally, I am, and I don't like to say I'm an anxious person, but I experience a lot of anxiety. So I've got strategies, etc. But sometimes I do get curious of like, where does this come from? And there might not be an experience that I will ever learn about as, oh, this was it. There was an age, at which this happened. But the body will remember. So maybe I could get to a point where my body remembers a state where I didn't have that anxiety, I didn't experience the anxiety, and then something happened. So I guess I'm trying to say is that there's the danger, let's say, of trying to go on a journey where you're looking for that fix, or you're looking for the origin, a clear origin that you can understand in words, let's say. And you might not find that, but you might just have enough experiences that then you can bring into your everyday life to give you that safety or whatever it is that you might need or lack. I rambled a good bit there.
I'm trying to find the question.
I know, there is no question.
Well, you talked about anxiety. Okay. No, I see where to go with that. Okay. Sometimes I don't know what it is. I know, how could I possibly know? But it's the mind. It's the mind looking for something. And a lot of times you're right, it's something deeper in the body that gets encoded, maybe when we're young, maybe when we're too young to fully understand what's happened. A lot of us, I would say almost everyone, suffers traumas during childhood. Most of them are unintentionally inflicted upon children, but just in that state where we're very aware, and actually the state of a child, and especially the state of a baby, is very, very similar to the state we're in when we're on psychedelics. We can feel more, we can see more. If you've ever seen what a baby looks like, just amazed with the world, so much information coming in that we haven't had a filter put on the mind, to restrict the amount of information and sensory information, especially that it's coming in. They're just overwhelmed with it. So a lot of times things can happen during that time where the child doesn't understand what's happened. At that age, we lack the emotional ability to make sense. We lack the intellectual capacity to process what's happened. We lack the vocabulary even to explain to other people like what's happened to us. And it just gets stuffed deep down inside the body. And the body is very good at digesting food and turning that into energy. But it doesn't know what to do with emotions. So these emotions just get stuffed inside the body. And over time, there's a lot of evidence to show that the cause of chronic illness have these deeper emotional issues that are unresolved for years, for decades in fact. A lot of times, it's not even ours. Traumas from our parents, from our grandparents, from our ancestors get encoded into our DNA. They didn't have the tools, they didn't have the ability, whatever it was, to deal with what they went through. It gets encoded into their DNA, gets passed on to the next generation. So sometimes we're even carrying things, and this is why it can be confusing to people. Why am I feeling this? Like everything's great. Like my life should be amazing. Why am I? You're carrying something unresolved from your past. And if you have the ability to work with psychedelics in this way, it's a real privilege that you get to do this work on behalf of your ancestors, and you can decide to be the generation that stops this transmission of trauma from generation to generation.
Yeah, that's a good one. Trauma can be things that happen to you or to people before you. And it can also be experiences or things that did not happen to you. Just making a quick pause here in our conversation because there was something I wanted to expand on that I didn't in the conversation, so I've added a little something right now. So trauma isn't just what happened to you, but also what didn't happen to you. So maybe you needed more stability, but experienced chaos. Maybe you needed your emotions to be acknowledged, but instead you got called dramatic each time you tried to express them. Maybe you needed to be comforted, and instead you spent time comforting your parents.
Also things that you did to other people. And that you regret doing.
Yeah, what do you do with that energy?
And that guilt, that shame, that frustration, that sadness, or that awareness of the pain that you caused to someone else, intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
And maybe when you were a child, I think a lot of us were guilty of doing cruel things when we were children and not being fully aware of the actions that we were doing to others. But then we slowly become aware, and that's really hard to deal with too. So it can also be about forgiving yourself and self-love.
And also taking responsibility, because say with relationships with doctors, it used to be more, it's changing. I can see the paradigm slowly changing. The doctors knew everything because they're the people who studied medicine, and I'm not disregarding that. Of course, they have information that is absolutely amazing and necessary, but patients need to have, or people need to have, a more proactive role in knowing what's going on with them, what works for them, what doesn't, so they can bring that information to either these ceremonies or even to their, traditional, normal, everyday doctor. So
yeah, you're right. We're used to going to a doctor and like, you tell me what's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? What instead
and that's
of listening
tricky because how do we change that too without disempowering doctors? Let's say.
I think it's I'm not against medical doctors and science. It has a role, really. It has a strong role, but we also need to come back to our bodies, and so start trusting our bodies and trusting our own intuition.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're told, you don't know anything. You need to listen to an expert. You're being told to take this pill, and you need to just take this pill and shut up. But a lot of times, with Western science, with doctors, because there's not a way, Western science is lacking tools to prove the effectiveness of psychedelics in the same way that we do all these tests for pharmaceutical pills. There's a lot of gaps in Western science. We're not able to prove emotional issues cause physical symptoms in the body, but you know it.
Yeah.
You know that when you're stressed out, you're more likely to get sick, right?
Yeah.
And even things like with pain. Show me pain. Where does the pain exist? Is it in your leg? Is it in your head? If I look inside your leg, can I see the pain? Can I measure the pain? Oh, well, this person says their pain is a 10. This person says their pain is an 8. What does that even mean? Everyone has a different spectrum of, well, have you broken your femur? Like, have you given birth to a child? Like, do you really know what pain is like? But we know that pain exists. We also know, for example, colors exist that we can't see. We see a very small spectrum of light. And even with infrared, ultraviolet, we can imagine, infrared is more red than red. Ultraviolet is more violet than violet. What is it? I don't even know what that means. But we don't truly know what it's like to experience this. But we know it exists. At the same time, explain to me red. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You can only experience red. You can measure, this is the wave pattern that appears as red, but like, tell me about the experience.
And that's where maybe control comes in, right? Because with our traditional, more Western idea of control of science is like, we have to be able to show things. But one thing that I question too is, say, people that do years and years of anxiety pills or antidepressant pills, and even go and have psychology sessions, but don't see life-changing improvements. Is that not enough science to show that that's not working? So maybe let's try something different.
Yeah, but it's partially about education and changing societal views. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. There was a certain stigma with going to a psychiatrist to talk about depression. What do you mean you're depressed?
Especially if you're
life
a man.
Life is hard. Yeah, especially if you're just drink a beer. Man up, right? What do you mean you feel sad? No, this is not allowed. Okay. And working with therapists, and again, like, they have their role. I've worked with a therapist in the past myself. But when you work with a therapist, sometimes you're not able to access these deeper issues. And what do I mean by that? Language is just a vehicle to explain an emotion or an internal experience I'm having to you. So I'm having some kind of experience, some kind of emotion inside of myself. I need to encode that into language, transmit that to you, hope that you can decode it. You decode it into an emotion experience inside of you, trying to understand what I'm experiencing. And then for you to respond back to me, you need to then encode your own response back. I need to decode that. So there's 4 chances for misinterpretation, for mistranslation, for mistakes.
Yeah.
Working with psychedelics, you become your own therapist. And it's not the role of me to be someone's therapist. I'm a guide. Okay, I'm here to kind of help you make sense of what you've experienced, to sort of point you in the right direction, but it's not to give you the answers. The answers that you seek, everything that you need to know is inside of yourself already. And they say that with working with psychedelics, it's not even teaching you something, it's helping you just to remember things that you already know about yourself.
Which brings us by, it's so interesting because I'm thinking of, you were saying the child state. As a child, it's like you say, the everything is like a new experience, and there's less judgment because not everything has to fit in categories so much. So it might be, oh, look how, they'll just look at a structure or a surface, whereas I will look at this and I see a table. So I'm already giving meaning to things. I always have, as a human, we're always giving meaning to things, so always judging them. And children do that less. So it's something that's learned. You're saying you see yourself as a guide, a person at the center, and then they get to learn about themselves and also seek it's almost like a puzzle. So say the doctor might have some answers for some things. The psychiatrist might have another answer to other things. The psychologist might help processing with the words, like you were saying. And the plant medicine and a guide could help them with another part of the puzzle. Is that more or less how you see it?
Yeah, it's another tool to use, and it's something that shouldn't be discredited or just ignored because it hasn't been proven the same way that science has proven other things. But even with therapists, it's not an exact science. It's up to them to listen and offer their own interpretation on what you're saying. And you could have the same person say the same thing to different therapists, and they will have a different response. They will have a different diagnosis, maybe even to prescribe different pills, Same as like dream interpretation.
Carl Jung.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's more important is that you understand what you need to do. There are things that can be confusing and that people need some guidance with, and what does this mean? What does that mean? And it's more about pointing them in the direction of like, yeah, this sounds like this is an area that you need to look at more. Try doing this. See if this gets results, And you're right, like working in a ceremony setting, we always set an intention. You're never just sitting there to see what happens. Well, you can, and you'll see what happens. But it's a chance to do some work, and that's what it needs to be approached as. So when people come to ceremonies, it's useful to have a concise intention. The intention shouldn't be to heal the world. You're not going to get it, okay? And you need to start with yourself first anyway. And it's not selfish at all to take care of yourself and take responsibility for your own shit first before you start to help other people. And sometimes you get an answer to that intention and it's very clear. Sometimes it's something else. Yeah. And you realize, that wasn't at all what I needed to work on. It's this other thing.
There's a bigger question you hadn't noticed yet.
Yeah. And so sometimes the only thing you really know at the end of a ceremony is what you need to work on in the next ceremony. But at least you have that direction. You at least have that direction to start preparing for the next ceremony.
And that's interesting because I've heard people say that they are not interested in going into that world because of that, because their life is okay as it is. They've got enough control. And so, like, why mess with what's working fine? Enough control. I was laughing here because Simon thinks that I am a control freak. So just to let you in on this. So what would you say to those people?
I would say that, so first of all, people have to want to heal, okay? I would never pressure anybody to come to a ceremony or force them. I invite people. I invite you. If you want to come. If not, I'm not here to force anything upon you. Some people don't want to heal.
And that's fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. A lot of time sometimes people don't feel good. Something's not right, but they're not ready to heal because there's something that feels familiar.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels right. This doesn't feel good, but I understand it. You know, and there can be a sense of, at least this is something to hold on to. And if I lose this, maybe I'll disappear. You know, they see it as, you know, this is something.
Yeah.
And the other thing is nothing. And that feels scary.
Absolutely.
That feels scary. It's not actually nothing, it's everything.
But it's
or
the
anything.
unknown. It's the unknown.
The unknown, yeah, and that can be scary. Yeah, at least I know what this is.
It also brings me to now think of safety, say. So people become more vulnerable, right? So how can we ensure safety because of that vulnerability? You know, accepting that people go to places they've never been that are unknown or might.
Well, I think it helps to know the person that you're working with. You have to trust that person. You have to trust the medicine too. Most of the people I work with, it comes through referrals. So someone who's come to a ceremony has a great experience, they tell people, you know, and those people want to heal too. And that's actually the best way to help other people, is to just do the work yourself. There's a big temptation when people come out of ceremonies, they've had this experience, they've had this healing, this glimpse into what's possible, and they want to bring their mother, their father, their boyfriend, their wife.
Not ready.
Exactly. They're not ready to heal. So the best thing you can do, if you want to help other people around you to heal, is to do the work on yourself, and they will see the change. They will see the change in you, and they'll ask you, you know, what is this? Like, you feel you'll get this a lot. Your energy feels different. You know, what is this? And then you can tell them. Also, somehow doing the work on yourself helps the people around you. It helps the people around you in ways that I don't fully understand. But just how, I think, especially with family members, the people that we're most connected with, energetically still, to do the work on yourself somehow helps the people around you. And this can be also useful for people who can't take the medicine because they're too frail, because they have some kind of medical condition, because they're taking some kind of pill that they can't get off of that would have a bad interaction with the psychedelics. So this is actually a way to help them, is to do the work on yourself. And it's not selfish at all, like I said, to take responsibility for your own shit first.
Absolutely. The most amazing experiences that you've had or that you've seen other people experience through medicine?
Everyone has a different process, and it's beautiful to watch people have these processes. I like working with people who come back, and we can work together over a longer term, and then you can really see the change. That's very rewarding. People are different, but a lot of people have similar first, second, third experiences with psychedelics, kind of dealing with the same sort of stuff. And then as you go deeper, that's when the real magic happens. I'm continuing to learn more about myself through my own work, and become more comfortable with not knowing. And not trying to understand everything. In the beginning, it becomes very tempting to try to understand everything and just use the mind. And then you have to surrender and like, no, this isn't about understanding everything. But as you heal yourself, you become more connected to the people around you, and you almost feel that you have a duty to heal other people around you who are ready to. Like, you can't drag anyone to make this happen, but you come to understand more about consciousness. You come to understand more about reality. You come to understand more about people. And through that process, you can see that to continue healing yourself, you actually need to help other people around you, which is beautiful, because if we can all become healers, we can help so many more people. And that's what I would like, to get people to that point more often.
And I'll actually add a little caveat here, which is people hearing, become healers might feel like, what does that mean? But the fact is, we all impact the people that we deal with every day.
Exactly.
So it's about choosing how you impact people around you.
Yeah.
You know, making that impact better than what it is in whatever way you can. Are you familiar with Adler?
No.
He's a contemporary of Freud and Jung. I think he's a bit controversial, but one of the things I like that he talks about is that taking care of yourself first, and then also doing things for others, of service to your community, to others around you, but without expecting anything. So it reminds me a little bit of what you're saying, like you have this vision of everyone supporting each other and becoming healers, but at the same time without forcing it on.
Yeah.
It's a difficult balance to get, right? Because
Yeah.
people can get enthusiastic, like, oh my gosh, I've seen this. You have to see it too.
Yeah. I think it's a, you know, to be a healer, and I really do believe like everyone has the capacity to heal. We're all healers.
That's beautiful.
The other person needs to ask you for help, you know, and I'm sure you're familiar with people who've tried to assist, or, you know, it doesn't feel like they're trying to help when you don't feel that you want the help. You feel like they're just butting in. They're trying to control you. They're trying to it's not welcome, and there's pushback. You know, no, I leave me alone. Like, I can do this. I can do this. But I think to put yourself in a state where you're able to help when people need that help is beautiful.
How do you explain people that are, let's say, wired to not worry naturally, versus people who are warriors, who see those problems?
The nature of the mind is to question and to doubt. Always. Fear. You never get rid of fear. You never get rid of fear. It's always going to be there. But what you can get better at is ignoring it. You don't need to believe it. You don't need to let it control you. And in fact, I think it can be good to have some fear. You know, if you're not feeling some fear about making a decision, maybe you're not fully present. You know, I actually have a very good friend who was telling me that, and he's a hedge fund manager, he's a big investor. He won't invest unless he feels some fear. Because he needs to know, what is the risk? What is the risk? And if I'm missing it, if this looks foolproof, no, I'm missing it. I'm missing it. And he'll make investments into things that he has some fear about, but he needs to feel some fear. But you don't need to listen to it. Castaneda actually wrote about this too. Carlos Castaneda. He talked about when you're on this path of knowledge, as he calls it, that the first opponent you face is fear. And you overcome the fear by ignoring it. It never goes away.
Especially if we're thinking just of our reptilian brain, right? As in, we didn't always have a roof over our heads. There were wild animals out there. So we did need to survive thanks to fear. So there is this historic memory, I guess, of this.
Yeah, our ancestors that were more risk adverse were more likely to survive than the risk loving ancestors that were, you know, oh, maybe let me try eating this berry, or let me
those were gone.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's finding that balance. We recently got a camper van. And I grew up, my first years of life were in South Africa, so I'm very connected to my fear of checking that everything around me is safe. And so I remember the first few nights in the van, I was very alert to any sound. And then I had to do but this is like, I had to tell myself, say, we've got access to the front of the vehicle, so I thought if somebody comes in, I can just jump to the wheel and run away, drive away, that kind of thing. And so just reminding myself, like you said, learning to ignore the fear. Sometimes you can do that in a logical way like that, but there might be scenarios in which you can't. So how do you ignore that fear and stay safe?
Fear is always irrational. It's an emotion. And I feel that it can help to purge out the fear. When you're feeling fear inside, to really look at it, either to journal or to sit with it. And what am I really afraid of? What would be the worst thing that happened with this?
Yeah.
And fear can be contagious too. When you're around, maybe you grew up with a parent that had a lot of fear, and then they two. and it's contagious, and they can transmit that fear to you, and then you start feeling the fear too. And I think that what helps is that you can purge out fear together with someone, but you almost need to let them know, like, hey, I'm feeling some fear. Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me look at this? So
and
that
stay in it.
So that they're prepared, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's look at this fear, so that it doesn't just infect them with, like, oh yeah, that sounds like it's, oh no, it's going to be really bad. It's like, well, let's really look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you apply some rationality to fear and to break it apart. If you touch the monster on its nose, it disappears. You realize it was all an illusion anyway. So by leaning into that fear, it just shatters. But running away from the fear, it just feeds that fire, and it gets stronger and bigger and scarier. Yeah, and then it can get to a point where it's really hard to contain, and then that causes some kind of collapse, or the system shuts down because it feels it's under so much threat.
Mm-hmm. You said right at the beginning about the discomfort, and say more Western medicine will give you a tablet or something to relieve the pain or to relieve the discomfort immediately. And I suppose people just need to be prepared to sit in some discomfort and take the time for that and make the time for that, because in our rat race, we often don't have the time. We believe we don't have the time, but everyone has 24 hours. So would you encourage people to make more time to become uncomfortable?
I don't think you need to go looking for ways to make yourself uncomfortable, but growth is on the other side of discomfort, always. And that's easy to say, and you're nodding your head, and of course, you're going to agree that there's growth on the other side of discomfort, but discomfort sucks. Yeah. Discomfort does not feel good, okay? But on the other side, but you need to go through that in order to grow. As a runner, as an athlete, when do you grow? Is it when you're in the gym working out or you're running hard? No. It's when you're recovering. The growth is on the other. You've gone through that discomfort. You put the body under stress. You put the body through some kind of discomfort. The growth is on the other side of that. It's not doing the work. It's on the other side of that discomfort. Yeah. We are, as Nassim Taleb, his book Anti-Fragile. There's different systems. He defines there's some systems are fragile, and when they come in contact with stress, they break. You can think about, like, if I drop this glass on the floor, it's fragile. It's going to break. Some systems are robust. They can absorb stress. I have this case on my phone, right? The phone is fragile. The case is robust. I could drop it on the floor. It'll just absorb the impact. It'll absorb the stress. And then some systems are anti-fragile, and they actually get stronger through stress. And a classic example of this is the human body. We are anti-fragile machines.
Fascinating.
The more stress we put ourselves under and then allow ourselves time to rest and recover, there's that growth. The immune system. How does the immune system work? It's by, when we get a virus, a bacterial infection inside of us, the immune system goes into work.
It learns about it, takes time.
Learns from it, and then you become immune to that particular virus. You don't get it again. So it becomes stronger as a result of this stress. Yeah.
I feel like maybe what we need is also a paradigm shift of less linearity, because that looks non-linear, right? Yeah. It's like, so say our bodies as anti-fragile machines, we will be exposed to a new virus, a new virus. We need to take the time to get worse, to get ill, so that our body can learn about what's going on and learn to respond. And then we become more robust, so the anti-fragility. And then next time we come into contact with something that is the same or similar, we have a way to respond that is better. But we had to take the time to allow ourselves to feel discomfort, to get ill, to take time to allow the body to do its thing. Yeah. And I guess because we don't see the body doing its thing, we feel like it's a waste of time. So say if I'm ill, I'll quickly want to take some tablets to just get the fever away or the fever down and that kind of thing. When really we know that, say, with the flu, common flu, everybody's had a flu. What's the ideal thing to do? Just stay, rest. Yeah. Take care of yourself. Don't go to work. Don't go running around. allow your body to do its thing, but you
Yeah.
can't see the thing happening because, so I suppose that's one of the ideas.
You're right. The medicines we take when we get the flu or we get a cold is just to alleviate the symptoms, to make us feel a little bit more comfortable. But it's the body that comes under stress and needs to heal, you know. So, and it's still, it doesn't feel good. You don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you take the medicine, it just reduces the symptoms a little bit, and for them to completely go away, you just need time. Just need allow the body to heal. Even when we cut the body or break a bone, there's nothing that we can do to heal the body. The body will heal itself. We put the Band-Aid on or the plaster cast just to avoid further trauma happening to the body.
Yeah.
But you remove the trauma and you put it in a safe space, the body heals itself.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Pretty magic. Yeah, think of it. Where do you see this in 10 years' time? And also, it's 2 in 1, I suppose, because if so many people through their experiences are seeing the benefits of this work of plant medicine, and at the same time we've got all these legal aspects of turning it into a monster too. Thankfully in Portugal, I mean, people can actually test medicine in centers for free to see, you know, the quality, and I think that's a beautiful process, because it's about acknowledging that oftentimes quote unquote drugs have a bad impact on people because of all the crap that's in there. It's not even because of the original medicine. But we know that lots of things are still not legal. So what are the, I know there are entities that are working towards, you know, legalizing things and making them part of the conversation in more regular medical settings or just everyday life. So where do you see this in 10 years time, let's say? And how would you encourage people to contribute to more and better information? That's it.
I think that you're already seeing a big shift in society with opinions, people being more open to working with psychedelics, or even if they don't want to work with psychedelics, but more open to the fact that they are medicines and that they can help people, you know, and maybe even for someone who, this isn't for me, but I understand that it can help other people, and I think that these other people should have access to this. These plant medicines have been around for thousands of years, so it's a relatively short amount of time that these things have been considered illegal, or they've been suppressed, and a lot of the folk healing was suppressed by the church. A lot of elements with shamanism were actually incorporated into organized religions, actually. So I think that there's more of a shift back, like decentralization of healing and of access to healing the self.
Also, where do you see it in 10 years' time? So you've gone way back where, and that's actually, I'll actually go back to that, the history of just the idea that plant medicine has been used for millennia, and always in ceremonial contexts, social contexts. It's a more recent thing that people will, quote unquote, do drugs alone. So, and we're going back to ceremonies too, I think, right?
I think that these medicines, in my opinion, are better to do in a ceremony.
And why?
There's power in community. There's power to heal each other. And it's although we talk about taking medicines, we are medicine. You know, and as you heal yourself, as you find, and really this is the way that the medicine works with you. It's not actually to heal you, but just as we were talking about how the body will heal itself, the plant medicines will remind your body how to make its own medicine, whatever that is. And as your body starts making its own medicine for you, it flows out of you and becomes medicine for other people. And anything can be a medicine. Singing, dancing. These are medicines, you know? You feel better.
Absolutely.
After singing and dancing, right? And doing this together. And people are craving this. Like when you think about, people go to bars, people go to nightclubs to sing and, you know, maybe not to sing or karaoke, but but to dance, you know, and to just vibrate and to feel the energy of other people, you know. They're seeking this. They're seeking this, and they don't know where to find it. You know, and alcohol can be a medicine in some ways, but it has a spirit connected to it. There's a reason we call it spirits. There's a spirit connected to it, and it can use you. And I think the key, like a lot of people end up getting used by alcohol and not actually using alcohol. People are seeking this, and people usually drink together, you know, unless the alcohol is using them and they're sitting and drinking alone because they, you know, have a problem. But they're seeking this power of community. They're seeking this healing together. So they're already looking for it. They're just not aware, or they've forgotten, because we were using these before. Our ancestors were using these before. And even in Europe, there are many native plants that are psychedelic that we've forgotten how to use. Because the church, organized religion, no, that's not how you heal. You need to come to us to heal. You know, we have all the answers to spiritual matters, to emotional matters, to, you know, to life matters. You need to come to us. And I think this is also why the knowledge was luckily preserved in indigenous cultures that weren't touched by organized religions in the same way. But even with indigenous cultures, and I have a lot of respect for different cultures who use different medicines, they will tell you that they don't own the medicine. That it's a tool that they use, that they're carriers for it. They need to be respected. There's a lot to learn from them. But they don't own the medicine. And I think this is something that you asked about before, like the issues with consumerism. You know, once big companies get involved, and you already see it with psychedelic startups trying to patent novel molecules, you know, or let's take the molecule that's in this psychedelic and we'll just tweak it a little bit so it's technically a different molecule but it has the same effects.
Impact,
Which I think is ridiculous, because it's the perfect medicine is already there. It's already available, and this is something that you're not going to really make money the same way that pharmaceutical companies made money in the past, of spending a lot of money to research a substance and then patent it and then offer it, you know, exclusively, have a monopoly on this particular thing. These plants grow. These plants are available for us. Even with things like Michael Pollan wrote about this in his book, This Is Your Mind on Plants. Opium poppies, for thousands of years, have been used as a painkiller. It's a natural painkiller. You take what's in the opium poppy, refine it, extract it, concentrate it to a toxic level, and it becomes highly addictive, you know, but it comes from a plant. It comes from a plant, and people have access to this. They can make they can grow opium poppies themselves, make poppy tea. And it's interesting that you can grow the plant, but as soon as you pick the plant to make a tea with, then it becomes illegal. You know, this thing that is nature. And this is another, I think, paradigm shift. Like, these are not substances that are being manufactured or created or having, you know, being done to someone as a harm, to, you know, to steal something or to inflict pain. Nature provides this. So to say that something that nature's providing is illegal, you know, it's a bit like gravity causes a lot of injuries. People fall, they get hurt. Maybe we should make gravity illegal to help people, to save people, you know. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And so the medicine will be patient and wait for us to come back. And I don't even think it's a case of I think politicians right now, like with the way that psychedelics are called drugs, you know, it's difficult for a politician to say, I want to legalize drugs. What? It becomes a very easy opportunity for an opponent to say, my opponent wants to legalize drugs. How could you vote for him? But the question is, why are we still electing politicians who continue to ignore the facts, the real facts? How many tests? There's been so many tests done with psychedelics to show their safety, to show their ability to heal, to help, and not just certain individuals, but wide spectrum of society. How many tests need to be done before it's shown, hey, this is safe.
That's
it's fine.
The question.
It can be safe. It can be safe. There's a way to work with it. You know, there's no test being. If alcohol were discovered today, there's no way it would be legal.
Yeah.
There's no way it would be widely distributed and encouraged and advertised and commoditized like the way that it is. You know, how many tests need to be done on alcohol to show that it doesn't help?
Yeah.
It's really bad for us. You know?
Yeah, I'd like someone to tell us when has alcohol been helpful.
Well, I think it has a role maybe to numb ourselves. You know, there's nothing wrong with if you're dealing with something, and we have different coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And the coping mechanisms for people need to be respected. You know, it's them trying to soothe themselves, trying to alleviate pain.
In that specific scenario, yeah.
Not everyone's ready to heal. You know, and maybe they're not ready to heal during this lifetime, and they just need to numb themselves too, and that needs to be respected too if that's what they really want.
It was actually a fictional book I was reading recently, but it talked about something that is real that I didn't know about it. It's called the darkness. So when you black out after having drunk too much alcohol, and there were lots of reports. So this is a real thing I didn't know about, where people, they don't even really forget things they do. They don't register them. So there are horror stories essentially of, you know, somebody that drank so much, blacked out, drove to the city where they grew up, went to the house where they grew up and murdered the whole family, got back home, the next day didn't remember a thing until the police came and spoke to them. So there's these crazy phenomena that can happen under the effect of excessive alcohol that seem to be proven, and yet we don't really do anything about that. So I'm just, why? Why is the question? I don't know.
It's a good question, yeah.
When you were talking about heal yourself, people that maybe aren't doing as much of this inner work, let's say, might see that as woo-woo, right? Because heal yourself, blah, blah, blah. I'm just living my life. I'm a normal person. But if we think of the broken arm example, your body will heal itself. You just need to create that environment that protects it enough so that it can do the work. And it sounds like what you're saying is similar too, that we need to allow ourselves to listen in and use these different tools to do that work, which is ours alone, and then hopefully share with others.
Yeah, and the plant medicines won't do the work for you, and that's something very important to explain to people.
Yeah.
You know, it won't heal you directly, but it'll put you into a state where you will see what you need to do if you want to heal. It will help to release things, to understand things. And maybe they're not going to be pleasant to look at, but they're still inside of you. The question is, are you prepared to look at these things that are inside of you that are maybe coming out in inappropriate ways, the wrong times? You know, the way that you speak to your children, the way that you speak to other people around you, the things that are preventing you from moving ahead in your life, the things that are preventing you from finding out your purpose and living your purpose. These are the things that need to be looked at, if you want, of course.
Yeah. Thinking of the risks, what would you say the risks are? One of them you've obviously mentioned, which is discomfort. That's one risk. What other risks? Because that's the thing. People can also live in fear of the unknown.
Psychedelics are not for everyone. Okay. There are some people who it's not going to help. It's going to make them worse. But it's a relatively small percentage of the population. Anyone with a psychosis or schizophrenia or a family history of that, the mind is already too loose and it doesn't need to be made looser to heal. There can be different medical conditions. If the body is very weak due to a medical condition, it's not right. It's not right for them. There's other modalities that they can work with. For example, breath work. You can enter altered states of consciousness through breath work, through movement, in fact, too, to help access this. With psychedelics, it's almost easier because it pulls you in. You don't need to do anything. You just need to surrender, and it shows you things. But it's really not for everyone. There are some medications that could have bad side effects. They could cause what's called serotonin syndrome if the body has too much serotonin floating around it.
What happens?
It can just shut down. It's you can go into cardiac arrest. I mean, okay, I'm not trying to make you afraid, but there are some risks.
And that's why you need to work with somebody that you trust and that knows what they're doing. And
exactly. What someone should be doing who is running ceremonies or offering support services, this is one of the first things that we all ask is medical information about prescriptions that are being taken. And there's many prescriptions that are fine. There's no contraindications with taking psychedelics. But yeah, there are a few that have some risks.
Yeah, it's a conversation to be had, yeah.
Exactly.
One of the things you mentioned about the mind being dissolved, that's one of the things that I find most fascinating about this is the potential for allowing yourself to reach new understandings that you've never seen before. Being more flexible than you are in your everyday life. Have you seen a lot of that in your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that psychedelics does is it turns off the default mode network that we're operating in the brain. That the brain wants to operate. The brain is a relatively small part of our body, but it uses a huge amount of energy. So it's always looking for ways to reduce the energy by being more efficient. So this is why we get patterns and habits and loops and certain ways of dealing with things. So one of the things that psychedelics does is it helps to temporarily deactivate the default mode network so that you can, the neural network can work around these patterns, can look at these patterns, look at these habits, look at the way that we're actually doing things. So to step out of ourselves to look at ourselves. And like I said before, it's for people who have only maybe had alcohol, it's the opposite of alcohol. Like it doesn't make you numb and stupid. It makes you more aware, more aware than you've ever been, and you feel sharper and clearer than you've ever been about things. Yeah. And even if things don't make sense afterwards, during the experience, they make sense, and you understand things.
So I guess this is not for people that say, this is the way I am, this is me, I can't change.
Absolutely, of course. Like I said, I mean, people need to surrender. They really need to surrender. Yeah. But the medicines help with that because by turning off the ego, it allows that flexibility. It's the ego serves an important role because there's many things that make up who you are, and the body is a junction that brings together all these different things. And in order for me to interact with you, we're connecting through our egos. The ego becomes the API for us to interact with other people. Otherwise, what is this Raquel thing? I don't understand. But the ego brings you all together into this coherent, unified entity with integrity. And so I'm able to interact with you and understand, who you are. But as a result of that, the ego, you can think of it as kind of like a belt that keeps you how you are and doesn't want to allow you to change. And even when we change our state to go from sitting to standing, is difficult, of like getting into bed or getting out of bed, like changing that state, you watch that too. Transitions are difficult. And it's the ego that causes this friction and if something as small as getting in and out of bed comes with some friction, some difficulty, to change who we are. Wow. So we see how we still continue to cultivate and continue these patterns that generate the same emotions.
Because it's identity too, right? It's who I am, and then
and if I don't do this, maybe I'm nothing. Yeah, maybe I'll disappear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
so to temporarily remove this ego, this band that's holding us together, and just to allow things to shift around, and allows us to see things that we normally wouldn't be able to see. You go on holiday, and a lot of times you get insights when you're on holiday because you just step out of your everyday routine, and I should do this, or I should I never realized that. Just stepping out of the everyday routine allows us to see things about ourselves and our world and the people around us that we're normally not able to do. And this is a bit like this is on a deeper scale, let's say, of you're really stepping out of your habits, your loops, your identity, all these things that you think are you, and you've constructed, or that have been constructed by the mind, constructed by the ego, to convince you that this is who you are, and you can't change because if you change, you might die, which is not the case.
It's so interesting too, because now I'm thinking, say, for people that cannot do plant medicine or don't want to at this stage, a tiny thing they can start practicing is just stepping out of those habitual patterns, doing something a little bit different, from their everyday routine, and just noticing what happens, just whatever it might be. I'm thinking, I did the Camino de Santiago a couple of years ago. I didn't really plan it because it's not a thing. I'm not religious, so had never thought of doing the Camino. But it just happened. And it was the first time in my life that I experienced no anxiety. And then I put it down to being nobody relying on me for anything because I was doing it on my own. I hadn't booked anything. So it was a total state of flow. That's one little example of stepping out of the habitual to connect with things we don't normally connect with. So if people can't do medicine right now or don't want to for whatever reason, they can start practicing little things.
When you become more aware, you realize that we actually move through different states of consciousness throughout the day. We've all had moments like, "Ooh, that was weird." I felt this way, and then you kind of ignore it. Like, let me go back to how things were. Working with the psychedelics, and even great example with walking the Camino, that you were in a different space, and that you gave yourself time and space to explore the things that were coming up for you instead of just ignoring them. No, that's weird. I don't want to think about that now. I want to get back to what I should be doing, or I need to be doing. I need to be working. I need to be productive. I need to all this stuff. We can become more aware. I mean, even without the medicines. I mean, to be honest, we don't need the medicines. We don't need these psychedelics to actually heal.
Because they're just removing all the layers we have, right? Or all the...
But it's hard. I say it's hard for 99% of people need something to just temporarily shift their state of consciousness so that they can see these things.
And that can actually help them to see that there's less danger than what people typically might think, is because that's all it's doing. It's not putting anything new into you. It's really removing barriers and boundaries that we have set up through learnings and things we've learned. So it's basically putting down lots of those. It's like we're in this room and we only notice a very limited amount of things, right? Because we have to focus on this conversation. If I started just listing everything I say, I would lose my, ability to communicate with you. But we do this to an extreme sometimes, I guess, in this society of control, of productivity. And I've got hope for the future because I see that millennials and younger people are, turning down jobs they don't like and questioning things much more than before.
Also, as Castaneda wrote, there are many paths you can take in life. None of them lead anywhere because we're all going to die in the end.
Yeah.
So what's important is that you choose a path that has heart and that you're doing something that you believe in. There is no destination at the end. All there is the path.
Yeah.
All there is the path. So if you're walking down a path that you can't stand and, I just need to grind this out, things will be better in the future.
There might not be that future.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That sounds harsh, but I love the idea too. That's how I try to live, is just being aware that tomorrow might not exist. This evening might not exist. And I know it might sound harsh to lots of people, but if we live more in the now, we live more authentically.
Yeah. We can make friends with death.
I mean, we're all going to die and we live as if we're not going to. It's fascinating too.
Yeah. And that's another conversation I think the society needs to have.
Yeah.
In terms of, and actually, yeah.
We're going to have Mirtha
here. I was just going to say,
we're going to have
talk about Mirtha
here,
about,
yes.
because
she's
really
it's a big
this.
topic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would like to add, Simon? Or a message you'd like to send people at home?
Well, I wanted to, just to go, like when I said 99% of people need something, I'm not saying that 99% of people need psychedelics to heal themselves, but they need something else, whether that be breath work or meditation or
psychotherapy,
something to heal themselves. I'm not saying that 99% of people need to work with psychedelics, but they need something.
Yeah.
But you don't actually need anything. You can actually just heal yourself. But it's a very small amount of us that can really do that. Something that can make it difficult for us to change is the ego. The ego makes us feel like we will die. That change means death. But that's because the ego won't allow us to change. And for us to change, the ego needs to die. Temporarily. You don't need to worry about the ego because it'll just reform. But in order to make any big change, the ego just needs to be smashed. But it taps into our deepest fear as humans, which is death. So you won't die, but the ego will die.
And again, is it control?
It's control, yeah, which comes down to fear. Control is about fear. So if we can let go of the control and just to surrender, and just to accept that we're actually a part of something much bigger. And I know this can sound a bit woo-woo, but as you go deeper into the psychedelics, you go deeper into healing yourself, you start to see that we're a part of this much bigger machine, force, entity that is difficult to explain and describe. Well, we'd have to do another episode about consciousness. But it's a way for us for you to transcend the human limitations that we have.
That's a beautiful note to finish on, because I'm actually thinking so much of our fears and what we do with medication and plant medicine and so on is because we don't acknowledge how limited we are in what we are able to see, to experience, to understand.
If you would like to work with me, I do offer group ceremonies, microdosing coaching. I'm also launching a new cohort of microdosing. So to bring together 6 to 10 people, everyone has their own intentions, their own process, microdosing together for 1, 2, 3 months. And we also include some larger dose ceremonies together. So this is a really beautiful way, I think, to make a deeper transformation, a longer term transformation, and to also do it through community.
Yeah, seeing how other people work through these things too and experiences. So we'll share all that information in the show notes. Thank you, Simon, for being here, for sharing with us. I hope you enjoyed that conversation where we covered quite a few things, and perhaps the biggest message is there is no quick fix. Just like when you have a bad headache, you do seek immediate relief. It's great. But it's important to research the cause of your pain. It's interesting and worthwhile putting your head up to listen to the alarm. It'll be tough, but it's important to hear what message your body is giving you. He talks about alcohol being encouraged to boost social confidence, but being addictive. So questioning these things that might be taken for granted. It was interesting too that Simon said that psychedelics won't change anything about you, but it will give you a temporary window of what could be, of the possibilities. I found Simon's comparison interesting, where he says that the state we're in as young children is similar to the state we're in on psychedelics. Our filters are lower because our filters are learned, and it's interesting to think about all the filters that we gather throughout our lives, all these different lenses we add on, what gender, what religion, what political position, all these different things that we start adding as layers of who we think we are. An aspect he mentioned that gives me a lot of hope is that idea that you can do the work on behalf of your ancestors. You may not have experienced a certain trauma or gone through a certain experience, but you know that your ancestors have, and you could be the one breaking that cycle. I find this really fascinating. Similar to what George Branco had said before, Simon believes that by working with these substances, you can become your own therapist. He sees himself as a guide to help you find your own path. And this means that you get to take responsibility. You need to be proactive. Your doctor, your therapist can't know what your everyday life is like. You are the one that needs to bring that information in. What are you doing with your lifestyle? He also mentioned the importance of setting an intention, something that is concise. And sometimes by the end of a ceremony, he said that you'll actually have an answer, but not to the question you asked. And that's okay. Try not to control everything. The idea is to go with the flow a bit too. But it's great to set an intention because, again, if integration is an important piece, it's good to revisit your intention. A thing he mentioned that I find profoundly worrying and interesting is that idea of the darkness from alcohol that I've also read about. Your brain doesn't even register something that happened. Blackouts occur because the alcohol can cause a dysfunction to the hippocampus, and that's the part of the brain that is responsible for memory formation. So fascinatingly, during a blackout, a person can continue to complete tasks and engage in conversation. Basically, your brain can't upload your short-term memory into long-term memory. So you might seem okay, but you can still experience this darkness, this blackout. And just think how dangerous that is, that your brain doesn't turn these short-term memories into long-term memories. Simon also mentioned that the plant medicine will not do the work for you. It might show you what to look at, but it will not do the work for you. This is essential because you still get to live your life every day. And you need to make some choices, some changes in your daily life. Talking of choices, Simon stated very clearly that psychedelics are not for everyone. So he explained that if the body is weak, for example, breathwork could be a better way to help you access these states. He also mentioned some other risks. And so basically, don't just go out there looking for these substances. But this is the same with any kind of medicine, right? I might be taking some medication that is fabulous for me, and I can tell you about it. And then you can go and discuss this with your medical professional, because based on your background and your health, this medication might or might not make sense. So it's about discussing these things with people that are sensible, knowledgeable, and making the best choices. I want to end with an invitation that he also mentioned. We talked about my Camino experience and just holidays, getting out of your everyday routines. So I'll finish with this question. Who might you become? What insights might you get when you go on holiday? when you step out of your routines, when you move away from your habits. So do something differently and see what happens. So that invitation is not necessarily with psychedelics, but also in your daily life without psychedelics. Do something differently, see what happens. With that, we have come to the end of this episode of the podcast Anxiety, My Friend, with me, Raquel Coelho. Thanks for being there. Lots of love. See you soon.